Hey everyone, welcome to the Underswell. I'm Derek Sabori. Thanks for being here. 3, 2, 1. We're live on this side. Steve, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Derek, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm really excited to dive in with you and ask about your long journey, your great career. You've done so many really interesting things, and it was fun. As I posted this, people kind of calling you the OG, and I know you're kind of a legend in the surf industry. Working at Quiksilver for so many years now, in sort of the boutique real estate industry. So I'm excited to dive in and talk about it all with you.
Thank you. Well, I am excited to share.
Well, let's do it. Hey, and happy Friday. You ready for the weekend?
I'm always ready for the weekend. Yes.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, I'm here today with Steve Jones, owner of bettershelter, a boutique real estate development company that creates and transforms unique homes, communities, and hospitality spaces. We were just talking about your Instagram page, which has you doing these walkthroughs, kind of before and after, what your vision is. You're, as you say, bringing a breath of fresh air to the design and development industry, right? How are you going about doing that? Give me a little insight there.
Well, over the years, I've developed a look and a feel.
Mm,
You could say it's like almost like a visual vocabulary.
okay.
And it started early on working at Quicksilver. I was there for a long time, and I was able to take a lot of the stuff that I learned at Quicksilver and bring it into this real estate area. And when I started doing the real estate, I was surprised at the reaction that I got with taking some of the stuff from the surf industry and then translate it into the real estate industry.
Mm.
And so that's been kind of like my little kind of entree into that, and that to a certain degree is kind of like my calling card as well.
We're gonna dive in. I want to go through all of that of how you even got into it, how you go from Quicksilver to being a real estate developer. But you're also a teacher for more than 20 years. You've been teaching display and visual presentation in the fashion department at Orange Coast College, and
Yes.
right, I know that's a lot, and that's where I think I first really kind of started to get to know you and be in the same space as you. Always sort of heard your name and knew of you, but I guess before we dive into all of that, because that's keeping you really busy. But I always like to just ask, besides work right now, what else is keeping you busy these days?
Well, I'm restoring a cabin, a little A-frame up in Lake Arrowhead. And so
Oh,
it's something that I picked up a couple years ago, and life got in the way. I've been busy with projects and everything else, and so I'm kind of picking that thing up and putting the finishing touches on it. So I hadn't been up there in a long time. I've been going up the last couple of weeks, so it's been really fun to see that thing get close to the finish line.
well, I didn't know this beforehand because we could have talked about it in our pre-chat. But we had a little almost like a quasi A-frame up in Lake Arrowhead near the golf course. And so
Yeah.
there's like a little lake, and we were on golf course road or golf course one of the golf course. They have like road, lane, something else. But so funny. I know the space, and I know those little spots. We had a really nice little place up there that was really fun to be at. Beautiful, quiet, and lovely up there.
Yeah, and it was funny. I just had it that I wanted a place up there, and so it was one of those things I just kind of dove into it. I bought it, and I figured everything else after the fact. So it's been really, really, really fun.
Cool. Well, that's exciting. Good luck with that. Have fun with that. I'll have to follow up and see how close it to the neighborhood that I was in it is. But Steve, you worked at Quicksilver, like you said, for nearly 20 years. But like I said, I don't think we really crossed paths while you were there. You and I first connected, like I said, at Orange Coast College. People are always interested, though. I want to stick on that real quick first because I think people are always interested. When I was teaching there, maybe you get the same question of how does one get a steady instructor job? That's a long time to be involved there and be a big part of that department, in a great department like that. How did your 20-year teaching career there start?
My 20-year teaching career started way back in the way back. I when I was working at Quicksilver, I was on an advisory board
Mm-hmm.
for the fashion department for Orange Coast College. We would meet once or twice a year. We would look at their curriculum and see what classes they were offering and look at their whole department and offer feedback, suggestions. And so one meeting, I suggested to the faculty at Orange Coast, I said, God, you guys, it would be great if this department offered some sort of a class that, like a visual merchandising class, where you talk about store design and
Hmm.
window displays, and at the time, Quiksilver had just started opening their own stores. So it was sort of like these Quiksilver, we were the first ones to do these kind of vertically branded stores. And so that was happening. And then the faculty said, yeah, we think that that's a good idea. We're going to add that class to the curriculum. And then fast forward maybe a year or two, I get a call and they said, well, would you be interested in teaching it?
Yeah, great idea. Would you, come make it a reality.
So
20 years later.
And so it was really cool. And so I said yes. And then it was awesome. Like kind of taking this concept and kind of starting from nothing and really kind of creating the syllabus, and over the years the classes that it's funny, the classes evolved to a certain degree,
Hmm.
but this is very much kind of a 101 type of a class.
Hmm.
And so there's like a certain foundation that I think anyone that's really interested in fashion, that interested in design, and a lot of this crosses over into interior design as well. Um, and I try to get this foundation of the basics. And so, yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. And even though I phased out of I'm not working at Quicksilver anymore, I do a lot of freelance design jobs that keep me sort of plugged into whatever is kind of going on out there.
Yeah.
And there's this foundation, these basics, and they really don't change.
Yeah, sort of timeless concepts, right? Tell me a little bit about the students there. How, I guess, have they changed? What do you see in students now that maybe you did or didn't 20 years ago when you started? And I guess you said, that class, a lot of it is still the same, but I don't know. Give me a little insight. What do you see every semester when you're in there? What are your takeaways?
Well, I mean, students are students.
Yeah.
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 And the thing that's so great about Orange Coast College, and specifically the fashion department, is the commitment that that department has to, like, churning these kids out.
Mm,
And so Orange Coast College has the fashion department. It's a great department. It's very highly regarded.
yeah.
They get a lot of kids going through there. And so it's really cool to see these kids that are interested again in fashion and design and really wanting to, like, head somewhere in that. And I applaud the department. I applaud all of the students that are there, really trying to take themselves to the next level.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, technology has changed, and we had, back in the day, there was no Zoom and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like my job is to turn these kids out as well.
Right.
So at the end of the class, at the end of the semester, I want to make sure that they have gotten trained in a lot of these like visual merchandising techniques.
Yeah, and trained in the Steve Jones way. It's like you're sending them off into the world because they're going to always look back and you're their mentor. You're giving them their foundation. You're giving them their tools to get out into the design world, right? And hopefully
Y-
go far with it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's great to fast forward 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and bump into some of my former students and see what they're doing. And a
Yeah.
lot of the kids, they end up in kind of other areas, but it's nice to get the feedback.
Okay, my last OCC question, and then we'll move on. But I could just because I can't help but ask: was there one person there that kind of brought you in and made the connection? That was sort of your bridge person there at OCC. I have somebody in mind, and I'm wondering if I'm right.
Chris Amaral.
There we go, Christina Amaral. I need to have her on the show. She was actually I was like, Christina's going to be my first guest, and I haven't reached out to her, but she is the master connector, bridge builder. and just she sees opportunities, knows what would be good for the school, for the students, for you, and she's just such a nurturing, kind person, right?
Yeah, she is an amazing person.
Yeah,
Her legacy swath is very, very, very wide.
yeah.
And it's kind of one of those things where, you throw the pebble into the
The
pond and you see the
ripple.
ripple.
Yeah.
I mean, her ripples extend
Her
pretty
ripples
far.
her ripples have become waves. We'll
Yeah,
just say, yeah.
they really have.
If you don't
Yeah.
know Christina Amaral, look her up on LinkedIn, connect with her, reach out. She's amazing. I'll have to reach out and say
Yeah.
hi. Speaking of school, I've come to find out, like my guest last week, Michael Marks, you're a fellow UC Irvine alum. So go Anteaters. Thoughts,
I
hats off.
am. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
With a great career story. Both Michael and I chose UC Irvine because it was in Orange County with proximity to Newport Beach, as I learned from him as well. So, what was your draw to that campus and school? And a little spoiler alert, I think I know the answer, but how'd you end up there with a Spanish degree?
Yeah, so I grew up in Laguna Beach, graduated from Laguna Beach High School, and when I graduated, I just had no idea what I wanted to do.
Mm,
Like zero,
really?
zilch.
Okay.
Yep. And so I was into surfing.
Hmm.
That was a big, big part of my life. It still is. And I surfed a lot down in Mexico. And again, and so then I applied to a couple of schools. I got accepted into UCI. Oh my gosh. And then again, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I thought, well, I surf in Mexico. I travel down there and maybe I'll get a Spanish degree and maybe it'll help me surf more down in Mexico.
Yeah.
And so it was a very sort of thin thread there that determined that major. And I graduated from UCI and I majored in Spanish. And at the time, it was like really wasn't interested in teaching. And I traveled to Mexico, but holy cow, not that much. And so that degree was like a little bit, what I learned in my Spanish degree was a little bit dormant. And then when I got into my real estate career, surprise,
Oh,
a lot of the construction industry speaks Spanish.
Spanish
And
speaking.
so it actually came in very, very, and I use it almost every day now.
Wow, that's interesting. I was going to ask like, how's your Spanish today, but I didn't even think that. That's really serendipitous, almost, right?
Yeah. And so my Spanish is,
Más o
más o
menos.
menos.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but there are a lot of times when I go to the job sites and I get these kids, they don't speak a lick of English. And so, um, holy cow, like I said, I use it almost every day.
That's
It's
so cool.
awesome.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before becoming a boutique real estate developer, you were, like we have already said, you were a well-regarded VP of visual arts at Quiksilver in its heyday, mind you, kind of as Quiksilver was the beast that it was. You oversaw design, you managed the look and feel of the various brands from a 3D point of view. Your department was responsible for retail design, trade show booths, corporate showrooms, signage, and events. You had a big budget, over $15 million, dollars, a staff of 20. So, kind of walk us through. I'm interested just sort of how you got that job. You've got a Spanish degree. You're a young surfer, Spanish degree. You don't know what you want to do. You want to surf more, but you probably can't surf, for most of us don't get to surf full time for a living. How do you end up at Quicksilver and parlay that into a career like the one you had?
So I graduated from college, didn't, again, with a Spanish degree, didn't know what I wanted to do. I was living in Laguna.
Hmm.
And so this was a little while ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there was this guy that made my surfboards, and he had a little surfboard shaping place out in Laguna Canyon, and his name was Sean Stussy.
Some of our listeners might have heard of him.
Yeah, and so this was back before Stussy was really Stussy,
Wow.
and so again he was making surfboards, and so him, Sean, and another guy, a friend of Sean's, Doug Bunting, they opened this tiny little store in Laguna Beach. It was called Equipe, Equipe,
Okay.
and it's a French word for something. And so their idea was to open this it was this tiny little skinny space in Laguna Beach. And they needed someone to do the window displays. And so Sean thought that I might be good at doing windows. And
Because
so, yeah, it was funny. So at the time, I was like surfing a lot. Um, but I was sort of like the kind of the vintage guy, I like I wore a lot of vintage clothing.
okay,
I drove this old car.
you
I
had a
think I
vibe.
bought, yeah, yeah, I had a
Yeah.
little bit of a vibe. Oh my gosh. I think I bought one of my old cars. I drove these old Ramblers. I had bought one from Sean. And so there was like something
Yeah.
they saw something in me and they like gave me a shot. And so I remember, so they said, "Hey, we have this store. Would you be interested in doing the windows?" And so I said yes, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anything about anything
Anything besides speaking Spanish in Mexico while you
besides,
surf.
yeah. And so it was really great that they gave me an opportunity and that they saw something in me. And
Wow.
I remember, yeah, it was really cool. And I remember the first window I did for those guys. I did the window, and then they came to the store, and it was sort of like, kind of sunset. The lights were just coming on. We walked across the street. We were looking at the window, and it probably wasn't that great, the window, but they saw something, and
Yeah.
so that was sort of the start of my career.
Wow.
And they just gave me 100%. I could do whatever I wanted to do. And so I took I took women's bodies, I laid them in paint, and then I laid their bodies on white butcher paper, and then we hung those in the window. I took surfboards, I chopped them up. We took the t-shirts, we did all sorts of stuff. And so again, they gave me a lot of latitude. And so people people drive by the store and people notice, and
Notice.
that's part of the power of visual merchandising. It's the
Mm.
power of branding. It's just like it's so powerful. And so people noticed, and so one thing led to another, and I started to get these little display gigs. I did the first trade show booth for Massimo. I started working for Gotcha. I started doing a little bit of work for Quiksilver. I was working for a ton of different brands. And yeah, and then one thing led to another, and Quiksilver gave me a call and they said, "Oh, we'd like to offer you a job."
Because by then you're building up this reputation as the visuals guy, right? As the window guy, as just somebody who's got a knack
Yeah,
for this, for bringing things to
I
life.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And the surf industry is very insular.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it really helps to kind of like understand the culture,
Yeah.
just understand the whole thing. And so I got it. And at the time, Quicksilver was this tiny, at the time, they were doing 60 million, which is at the time was a big company. That's when I started with Quicksilver, and I was there for quite a while. And by the time I left, I think they were at like 2.2 billion in sales.
Jeez.
So it was this crazy, it
Rocket
really
ride.
was this crazy, yeah, kind of holding on. And they were, kind of right place, right time, and all that sort of thing. But at the time, there was in Orange County, especially, there were so many companies that were popping up.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
was really cool.
That was
Yeah,
an
yeah, it was really great.
exciting time. I want to know for that first one, the Stussy window, did you get paid for that first one, or was that sort of like, hey, come do this? We'll give you some t-shirts. We can't pay you kind of thing.
No,
Do
they
you
were
remember?
totally cool. Yeah, no, I got paid.
There we
Yeah,
go. All right.
yeah, I got paid.
Which is probably a good lesson because I know there are a lot of stories where you don't get paid, you're just working. It can still lead to things, but you said it. Well, that wasn't one of my planned questions, but was that because you demanded it? You knew that there was worth, and somebody had taught you that, like, hey, always get paid and start that pathway, or were they just cool and they offered to pay you? Do you remember?
Well, probably would have done it for free.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I probably would have
Just
done it for
between friends
free.
here, just or just.
Yeah, and it was like, and again, like that was there was I saw it as an opportunity. I
Yeah.
really did.
Yeah.
And even though I didn't, again, I didn't know what I was doing, I was like, I think that there's something there. And I enjoyed working with the materials. There's something about like the 3D nature
Yeah.
of window displays. And again, it's just like there's this like transformative power of like design. And you can really, it started really with those windows.
Well, let's talk about design because I can only imagine, my time at UC Irvine, I switched from being a civil engineering major about 2 years in. I'm like, I got to get out of here. This is killing me. It's not working. And I switched over to art. And I was, since I wasn't a specific type of artist, I mostly did installation art. So I know that feeling of walking into an empty space and going, okay, what do I want to put in here? And what media can I use to fill this space? And how do I convey a message with whatever? How for you for design then was this sort of a learned skill that you just learned as you went? Was there something innate? I know we talked about the vibe, but I guess let's just talk about design. That evolved over, I'm sure, exploded for you and in your life over the coming years. But I don't know. Walk me through a little bit of the how you evolved when it comes to design.
So I have no formal training in design. I am very much again like my point of view and sort of how I look at things is very much rooted in this kind of coastal, oceany sort of point, surf kind of point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking for it to be this like kind of surf turkey sort of thing. I like to think of it as being maybe just a little bit more elevated. I've always been drawn to like old things and vintage. And like I said, I used to dress in vintage and all that sort of thing. And so I was just like these like old things kind of interested me.
Yeah.
And so I tell people all the time, I've set my whole life up to be able to shop at flea markets. And so it really started when I was working at Quiksilver when we
Huh.
were doing the stores. And we had to decorate the stores and what do the stores look like. And
Mm-hmm.
again, Quicksilver, they sort of handed the whole thing off to me and they said, Tag, you're it.
Mm.
And so we had to kind of figure out like this, like what does, I mean, I knew what a surf shop looked like, but what does a Quicksilver store look like?
Right.
And so again, we were sort of starting from zero. And Quicksilver, of course, has this like rich history in terms of the team writers and their legacy and all the stuff that they've built with let's start with the apparel and the events that they do and their athletes and everything.
Yeah.
But my job was to kind of take all that and elevate it. And we got a lot of that lift by taking fine vintage things and putting them in the stores. And then I got really like curious and interested in sort of like seeing people walk into the stores and this is a business, right? We're
Yep.
we're in the we're in the business of, moving the merchandise.
Yep. Selling stuff.
And yeah, and so it was really like, well, how can we like what does it look like to generate sales and how can we increase sales and what does that look like in terms of the layout? And so part of my job was to make the stores look pretty, and part of my job was to increase sales.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the things that I try to impart, teach at the class that I teach. Really like this whole visual merchandising thing is sort of like at the intersection of business, commerce, and art, and those two intersecting. So
Yeah.
it's super cool. And then like it's this code that every brand is trying to crack that code, and some are certainly more successful than others.
Yeah.
You could say that Ralph Lauren has done a pretty good job.
Exactly. And I you could say that. And I wonder how do you when it comes to design because I would say that not everybody appreciates design or would sort of give it the priority that it deserves. If you had to kind of pitch somebody or a company on like, you guys, you got to put some energy into design, like what do people overlook about design?
Well, I think that what people perhaps don't understand, like I said earlier, is this transformative power of design.
Yeah.
And then you look at some of the brands that are really very successful, highly regarded, and relevant,
Mm,
which is very much a key word
yeah.
with any brand. How does a brand stay relevant? And how do these brands like continue on? And you could say that design plays a huge part in them succeeding, going to the next level, and staying relevant.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to point to Hermes.
Mm,
They are this uber, uber, uber luxury brand. And you look at their window displays in any store that you go to, and they're so fun. They have
yeah.
like this sense, they have like this like kind of sense of whimsy. They don't take themselves that seriously. They kind of, kind of take the air out of themselves a little bit. It's like this perfect mix that like helps them actually get to the next level.
Yes. And it's almost like this quiet power. I think sometimes that design. I think it's when it's done right, you almost forget that that it is design. It's just like it catches you, it brings you in, and you forget that somebody had to create that look, that feel, those colors, those products, those patterns. That are design. Design is sort of at the heart of everything. My son and I were on a road trip these last couple of days, and on the highway we saw a Maybach go by, which I guess is the
Yeah.
premium, right?
Yeah.
Mercedes.
Hmm.
And then he started
Yep.
saying, well, hey, that's premium, but then Rolls Royces, they start at $374,000. They own, that's the base model. But he was saying there's only one person apparently, from what he thought, that can pinstripe the cars. So they fly that designer, that creative, wherever a new car is being made because they're all customized. So it's just that is how important design is to them. That it's like, no,
That's yeah.
we
Yeah.
give this
Yeah.
job.
There's
We believe in
yeah.
Steve. Steve does it, and
Yeah.
that's it, right? So
Yeah, I
crucial.
think that there's a level of commitment that brands need to make towards their store design, towards their point of purchase, towards their fixturing, all that.
Yeah.
You never want to underestimate the public. People are a
Mm.
lot smarter and people see and they a lot, not much gets past people. Let's put it that
Interesting.
way.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
You're giving the public credit. I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
how then did you transition into real estate? So you've created a niche here for yourself. You've got a reputation. You're well regarded. I'm sure you're making a good living. Things are good. As you're going to a multi-billion-dollar company, helping them to grow. You're sort of you're a key component of that growth. But how do you transition into real estate? That must have really felt like a big jump, or maybe it wasn't. Tell me about that.
So I was at Quiksilver. I think I was 23 when I got hired. 23, 24, something like that.
Okay.
And so I was at Quiksilver for over 20 years. So it was a long time.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I remember walking into work one day and I was like, holy cow, I'm like one of the oldest guys here.
Mm.
So I was
What has happened?
and again, I'd been there a long time, loved the brand, loved the industry, loved everything about it.
Mm.
And real estate is just something I've always been interested in. And again, it's like this sort of, there's like certainly a lot of design that goes with it.
Yeah.
I'm interested in like, again, old things and old homes. And so I was like, it was really like, I felt like I was kind of aging out of the apparel industry.
Mm.
And I was just, and again, real estate was just something that I was like really, I like that when I woke up in the morning, that was what I thought of, and that's what I was interested in. So I was like,
Was there a crossover? Sorry to interrupt, but I guess was there a cross? Were you already dabbling in real estate, or was just you were just always had your eye on it, and you had Dwell magazine subscriptions, and were always just kind of poking around looking at things?
yeah, I mean, I had purchased a home, I
Okay.
had purchased like an income property. I was sort of like kind of
Yeah.
dabbling in
Okay.
that, just
Yep.
like a little bit.
Yep.
And then I was introduced to a guy Pete Zender, he is a local Orange County legend, and so he had this property that he was working on. We partnered up on that property, and so that was like my first real estate deal.
Mm.
And so that was actually in Costa Mesa, West Side Costa Mesa. And again, we sort of took all of these kind of surf industry, all of this kind of stuff that we had learned in the surf industry and applied it to this development that we did. We branded it, we called it 1.7 Ocean. It was a little community of 12 bungalows.
Hmm.
We named it, even though it was West Side Costa Mesa, we named it 1.7 Ocean because it was 1.7 miles from the
That's
beach.
what I was gonna say. I was gonna say it's like, hey, we are still pretty close to the ocean. So yeah, 1.7.
Yeah,
That's
holy
right.
cow.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, like so close to the beach. And so it was cool. And the other thing that I wanted to say about like transitioning from kind of one industry to another is in the apparel industry, it's like you go through these seasons, you go through all of these cycles,
Mm.
and it happens super fast.
Yes.
And so you sort of like I woke up one day and I'm like, God, is what I'm doing like okay, so I'm making cool stuff and we're helping this brand and there's like that, which was very satisfying. But then you sort of get behind the why, behind the why, behind the why. And I was like, is what I'm doing like, is it really like making a difference? Like,
Mm.
what was I like? It just like it was like this funny thing. And again, kind of
A difference in the world, or a difference in people's lives, or just sort of a different. What do you?
Yeah, just kind of like a little bit of all of that.
Okay. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And again, like, fashion is so kind of fleeting and transitory. And
Mm.
you do a display and it's up for a minute and then it comes down and you do a
Yeah.
trade show
Yeah.
booth and then it's up and it's down. We do a store. A store has a shelf life of about 5 to 7 years. And so you're constant. Again, this goes back to brands staying relevant. You can't just be this like sort of moment in time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so it is a little bit of like a hamster wheel. And one of the most satisfying things I've gotten out of like my, kind of real estate career is being able to look back at like all these, homes and projects that I've worked on, and they're still around.
Yeah. So there's a sense of permanence there that you can say, I did that.
A little bit,
Yeah.
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 And
Huh.
so, and I'll be driving through neighborhoods. I've done a lot of work up in Northeast LA, and I'll be driving through neighborhoods, and I'm like, oh my God, I did that house.
Yeah. 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 That's
And then
right.
I go around a corner, I'm like, there was one street in Atwater Village. I had done four homes, one right, and then we were working on this one home, and I was like, I this place just seems so familiar. And then like I finally, like a month after we were working on this home, I was like, oh my God, I did the home literally across the street. Very, very, very early on in my real estate career.
How
So
funny.
it's very satisfying.
Yeah.
Even like with the ones down in Orange County in Costa Mesa, 1.7 Ocean and 12 at Eldon, like people live there and they're still there
It's still
and
there,
they
man.
look great. And so
I could vouch for
it's
that. I live right around the corner from those, so I see them all the time on our walks, and I'm like, yeah, I know who did this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it's been there's a satisfaction there that you're actually, and then you think of like a lot of what I've done is I've flipped homes, and I think about the families that are going to be moving into these homes, and
Yeah.
they're going to be celebrating their holidays and raising their kids and
Yeah.
making meals, and it's like this whole thing. And so it's something that like I don't take lightly, and it's something that I really think about when I'm going through these homes. Like, well, I try to create kind of like a profile for whoever the buyer will be. And again, oftentimes it's families, and so it's cool to think of them in that regard.
Yeah, and do you often, I know here, at least in the ones you did here in Costa Mesa, were sort of, the west side was always more industrial, it was always sort of up and coming, and you got in relatively early, I would say, and it helped sort of elevate the neighborhood. And once you're the first mover, then other developers are going to go, or other buyers like, ooh, this area. and it just sort of helps move that community along and build it. Is that sort of an area you kind of continue to look at, or is it the neighborhoods and the community, or is it the house that you're always looking for, or is it both?
It's a little bit of both. I
Mm,
remember, again, going back to 1.7 Ocean, West Side Costa Mesa, this was a while ago. And so there was really no there there.
yeah.
And all of the kind of real estate community was like, you guys are crazy.
Mm,
And so we were like, well, we think that there's an opportunity. I look at everyone. I was still working at Quicksilver at the time, and I looked at everyone, everyone that I worked with at Quicksilver. I was like, well, these are all like cool people, and they're these interesting, kind of colorful characters. It's like, well, where would they want to live? And so again, kind of creating this kind of, customer or profile.
yeah.
And at the time, it really was sort of like you either got like these kind of generic stucco boxes. We saw an opportunity to create something that wasn't there in the marketplace.
Yes.
And going back to location, we there it West Side Costa Mesa really was kind of a wasteland. And so we called it the West Side Business Culture, and we got a bunch of like-minded businesses. And again, at the time, they were sort of few and far between.
Yeah.
And we created this like little community, and we packaged it in such a way where we were able to present it to a buyer. And it was like, well, this is where you can go to get your coffee. This is where you can go to the market. And it was cool to be able to kind of take the whole West Side and kind of brand it.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, the history of the area that Steve's talking about, where I live, is, I mean, we called it Velcro Valley. This is where the surf industry evolved and really exploded,
Yeah.
right? I mean, almost
Yeah.
everybody except for Quiksilver, was here within a mile of that property you're talking about. I mean, Volcom,
Yeah.
Billabong, Hurley,
Yeah.
Ruka.
Yeah.
So it really
Yeah.
was the heart of it all. What are Steve? Maybe tell me some standout moments of as you looking back on all of that you just kind of walked through. But has there been a big memorable highlight? Was it your first flip? What was the hardest, scariest part? I don't know. What were some standout moments from what's happened over the last 20, 30 years?
Oh my
There's
gosh.
probably so many, but
Well, yeah, mostly what I do is I flip homes, and so I flipped hundreds and hundreds of homes, and so one of the kind of, I guess, highlights. So when I started, it was in sort of 2007, 2008.
okay.
And so this was called the Great Recession.
Yeah, that's right.
And so real estate prices were plummeting and no one really knew where the bottom was. And so I went into, again, Northeast LA, and this was mostly kind of like Highland Park. And so again, nobody knew where the bottom was, and so I started buying these properties, flipping them, and I had mentioned that, Pete and I had created the West Side Business Culture. We took that same concept and put it we called it the NELA, Northeast Los Angeles Business Culture.
Okay.
And it was the same idea to
Hmm.
take these kind of like-minded businesses and kind of package them together and sort of like write it out together. I mean, it was really tough times for a while. So when I started working in Northeast LA, again, this was a while ago, it was just like it was pretty rough.
Mm,
And so fast forward to today, well, Highland Park has completely transformed.
really?
It's so cool. And to be able to go back to Highland Park, drive through, either York or Figueroa, and
Hmm.
see all of the businesses that have opened up, and to see the vibrancy that that community has generated, and to know that I had like a little bit of a part of sort of starting that germination or whatever is pretty cool.
Yeah, you were the spark, part of the spark, and I can't help but think even if the surf industry like being a spark and watching that thing explode and that wildfire grow from when you got in the earliest days. So that's really cool. And I was also thinking I misspoke as well when thinking back to This Is a Jump. That story is awesome, and I love that you've been able to be a catalyst. Um, but also, I said that Quicksilver wasn't in Velcro Valley, but they were. Volcom was in Quicksilver's old building. So,
They were, yeah. When I
yeah.
first started working at Quiksilver, we were actually, I think we were on, I think it was on was it on, I think it was on, I think our
Mon-
offices were on 16th.
and then Monrovia, right?
Then it moved to
Monrovia.
Monrovia. Then they
Okay.
moved to Graham Street in Huntington
Huntington.
Beach.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first was working at Quicksilver, again, they were like, okay, you're in charge of all of this. And I was like so into my job. Um, I worked a lot. I was I have a very, you could say I have a very strong work ethic. And so I had keys to the building and I would go in on like Saturdays and then I started going in on Sundays too because there was just like a lot to do. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And I remember one day I got called into the human resources office and they said, "We want your key." And I was like, "Why?" And they said, "Because you're working too much. You need to
Ah,
like slow down. You cannot come in on Sundays."
yes. And for, that's
So,
it. Well, I want to get some. I want to. Here's my next. We're going to take a break, Steve, because I call this show the Underswell because I really believe that underneath all of the big moments or the things that we do or what gets you to show up like that, working 7 days a week, or the things that are on our resume and bio, there are all these small things sort of in between and underneath the surface that drive us all. So we'll take a quick break. I'll come back and find out what's driving you and get some advice from you for young career builders. So hang tight.
awesome.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the episode. I'm always so inspired and motivated by these career stories, and I hope you are too. And I wonder, are you looking to be featured on the show? Each week, I chat with an invited guest who is an expert in their space or who has compiled a stellar resume. If you fit that description and are interested in being a guest, just hit me up at Derek Sabori on LinkedIn. And here's something else to consider. This show platform is for hire. I build professional and personal podcast profiles for people who are looking to stand out in a crowded marketplace. You've heard my guests say it's your personality, the way you connect with people, and your ability to relate and communicate that will help land that next job, client, or customer. So let's show off your personality, not just your resume, and let's do it on a podcast. Head over to theunderswell.com to learn more. And now back to the show. Steve, right before the break, you mentioned that at one point, Quiksilver HR comes and takes your keys away from the building because you're working too much. You've got this great killer work ethic. You're a self-starter. You're self-taught in design. You're a career builder. You're entrepreneurial. You've got all of these things that when you look back, it's like, wow, you've really built a really impressive resume. So I do want to know sort of, what do you think it is? I call it the underswell. What's your underswell? What's underneath it all? What's driving you? And what makes you tick? What is it?
Well, how much time do you have?
Yeah, well, let's. I'll make the time. I'm here for it. I want the because I think it's fascinating. For some people
Oh
it's
my
money. For some it's
gosh.
just being creative. For some it's like, no,
Yeah.
I want to impress somebody in my life.
Yeah,
I want
yeah,
to hear
yeah.
yours.
No, I think oh my gosh. I think yeah, like I'd mentioned earlier, I do have very much a strong work ethic. I'm not going to call myself a workaholic. I'm just
Okay.
going to say I have a strong work ethic. So we're going to
Okay.
make that distinction right now.
All right.
Because I am not a workaholic. And one of the things that you and I had touched on a previous conversation is that so I've been put in these positions where oftentimes I don't know what I'm doing or I don't know how to do it.
Mm,
And so Quicksilver, we can start with Quicksilver. So Quicksilver says, okay, you're in charge of trade show booths.
mm-hmm.
Well, I had never kind of managed that whole process before. And so there is in any time you jump into something new or
Mm-hmm.
something that you might not have a lot of facility around, there's going to be a learning curve.
Yeah.
And so my learning curve in a lot of these situations was like straight up and down. It wasn't like I had worked at another company and I had done this before. It was none of that. It was sort of being thrown into the fire or,
Sure.
however you want to say it.
Yep.
and so yeah, and so a little bit was like you kind of fake it till you make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same thing with development and real estate. I was interested in real estate and I was interested in development, and I didn't know that much about construction, and I really didn't know that much about anything. I knew what like kind of looked cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's a big part of the deal. And so again, there's a learning curve. And so you gotta like I think, part of the underswell is like you gotta just like suck it up and put in the time,
Mm.
if that makes sense. And so if it I was, and I don't know if perfectionist is quite the right word, but I want it to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And so I'll never forget, I remember doing this trade show booth. This was back before I started working at Quiksilver. I was working on a trade show booth for Gotcha, who is like no longer in business. And so I was working with Mark Price, who at the time was like the VP of marketing. So I'm working with Mark, and we are finishing this booth, and it's like 11:30 at night. I'm exhausted. I'm this like 22-year-old kid, right?
Mm.
We're in Florida. And so I'm with Mark and we're hanging the clothes and we're doing what we're doing. And Mark's like, he's way high. He's like the VP of everything, of
Yeah. Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
And so we finished doing what we're doing. And then Mark gets on. Oh, we didn't have a vacuum cleaner. The vacuum cleaner was broken.
Okay.
The carpet was dark. And so Mark gets on his hands and knees and starts picking up all the little pieces of trash that are on the carpet.
Okay. Setting an example, leading by example, or what do you call that?
I looked at Mark and I was like, okay. I got down on my hands and
This
knees
is
and I
what we're doing.
started picking up all this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it took another however long it took, half hour, 45 minutes. We got out of there after midnight. And I swear I never forgot that.
Wow.
So, and sometimes that's what it takes. You're staging a house, or you're working on a home, or you're working on an install. I just finished this huge job I did this California Surf Club deal down in Redondo Beach, it was a big, big job. And it takes something to get it. Sometimes it takes something to get it to completion.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's something, and if it's 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whatever it is, and you're not finished, well, we're going to be staying a little bit later.
Did your I guess I want to push a little bit into that and see like, so what is there, do you remember what it is that made you that way? Were you born that way? What makes you want to, or was it modeled by people like Mark Price or
Yeah, I think that there's some of those like kind of early, mentors, people that you look up to and you
Mhm.
sort of see how they do it. And something with me clicked on some level, that it was like, and again, some of this stuff it doesn't come easily.
Right?
And I put myself in some of these situations where I might not know how to do it, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And so again, my learning curve might be a little bit steeper, but I think that there's like again, when you get back to, when you peel back the why behind the why behind the why, it's like, how do people grow? How do you grow emotionally, spiritually, financially? Like, how do you grow?
Hmm.
And so, one way for me to grow is to take on these jobs or these projects or whatever that I might not necessarily know the answer to. So, flipping a home, yeah, I've done that hundreds of times. I'm pretty good at doing that.
Yeah.
Opening, designing a members only private club, a Soho house for surfers. I've never done that before. And so again, a little bit of a learning curve.
Yeah. But you've got obviously, yeah, that's just a skill that you have. You dive right in. You say, "Let's go." We'll figure it out as we go. And each of your past experiences informs that. Did you ever did you know? I think we all do. So was imposter syndrome ever there? Where you're like, "What am I doing?" Like, I'm talking to real estate people. I don't know this space. I'm talking to big developers. I don't know. How did you deal with that feeling of like, "What am I doing here? I'm in over my head." Or did you not?
Yeah.
Maybe, or did you not?
Well, I think that I think the imposter syndrome, that is this, I think that there's a lot of people that can relate to that. And
Mm-hmm.
certainly I've put myself in situations where you're at this huge table with all these people and I'm like, oh my God, how did I get a seat here?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but there's also, I think that there's maybe a confidence that comes with what I've done and what I do. And again, people look to me for a certain kind of point of view or an aesthetic or what have you. And so I feel like I've gotten certainly a little bit of confidence in that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've put in the reps. You've paddled out enough times. You've ridden enough waves that you're like, I got this. Like I know I can do this. The instincts kick in. I'm good at this. You remind yourself that no, I'm confident. We've done this before. We can do
I
this.
think, yeah, I think so. And it goes back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, the relevance part. It's like you always want to be adapting and evolving and again, kind of growing, and you want to stay relevant. And so I try to stay up with not trends, but I'm certainly always looking at what everything else is going on and trying to kind of get a pinpoint and hanging out and asking people and there's certainly something about being relevant and not being kind of stuck in a moment in time. I
Yeah.
look back at some of my earlier design projects, early on, and where I'm at now, you can see that things have changed
The
for sure.
the evolution.
Yeah, but then there's kind of this core element too that really does kind of stay the same at the same time.
Mm.
So, I think for kids that are, kind of starting out, and this is one of the things that I teach in my class. One of the things it's like I'm especially in these projects where I'm hired to be like a designer,
Yeah.
my job is to make the owner look good.
Mm.
And like when I got hired at for California Surf Club, I said to Alan, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna make you look so good.
Yeah.
So
And you did.
yeah, yeah, they were stoked. And so again, one of the things that I say to my students in the class at Orange Coast is, when you get hired at a company, you've got this piece of paper and it's got your job description and your responsibilities and you're responsible for this and that and whatever is on that job description. But one of the things that they never that always gets left off, and it's the number one thing, your job is to make your boss look good.
Yeah. Make the client
That's
look
your
good.
job.
That's it.
Yeah,
It's
or the
simple.
client. That is job number one. And so that's what I try to do in all of my freelance projects as well.
In addition to that, I think that's kind of a blend to me of a hard skill and a soft skill in a way. But I guess what's kind of the most important soft skill that you think young people coming into the workplace, especially in any of these areas that you work in, that they need? Is it
Listen,
being a good listener? Okay,
yep,
yeah, okay,
yep.
yeah.
There's a reason you have one
And
mouth and two
two
ears.
ears. Yes, I love that one.
And I really would encourage, and again, I try to teach this in my class. It's like when you show up, if someone's interested in hiring you for, to design something or whatever that looks like, it's like you want to make sure you're asking a ton of questions
Mm,
and get like really kind of curious and interested as to, again, like the why behind the why behind the why.
Yeah.
And usually for most people, it's like, oh, we want to hire this person because at the end of the day, we want to, generate sales or, we want to elevate our brand or whatever that looks like. And so as a designer, again, you want to get really curious as to how you can make a difference.
Yeah. That's good advice. Well, I think I've only got time for a couple more, Steve. I could go all day with you, I think, but I'm gonna try to wind it down here for you. I guess looking back on the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, scanning kind of the professional decisions that you've made, what have you learned about yourself? And was there any sort of, kind of your biggest lesson learned from it all?
Well, gosh, that's a big question, but I think it's a little bit of it is what I had just mentioned to you about listening. People tell me all the time I'm a good listener. And
Mm,
so I really I take that, I take pride in that. And
yeah,
so yeah, you really want to listen to people for like what's important to them and what matters to them. And how can I add value and how can I make a difference for them?
yeah.
Really like to serve.
Mm. See, I like the idea of going into business, into any work we do as sort of a service industry. Kind of whatever you're doing, you're serving the next person in line. You're serving whoever you're working with. Any stakeholders along the way. You're in the service. We're in the service industry to help people.
Yeah, we really are,
Mm,
and along the way, we can create great spaces, and we can do things that are beautiful, and we can make a difference, like with the general public. And people walk into these spaces, people order their meals and eat in these restaurants and all that sort of thing. But yeah, we're really here, like I'm really here to serve. And again, my job is to make the owner win.
yeah. I think you've just given it to us, but if there was a way to wrap all this up, then and we wanted to kind of give three things for people to keep in mind as they're building their careers out. I hate to be repetitive because I think you've just laid it all out really well, but can we narrow it down and give kind of your final advice to somebody who wants to build a great career like yours?
Well, I think you can get a mentor, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a person that you even kind of talk to, just like pick someone that you admire. It
Mm,
could be some, kind of public figure or
yeah,
whatever that looks like.
and watch and
How do they
listen.
dress? How
Hmm.
do they act? How do they speak?
Yep,
Like all of that sort of stuff.
yep,
You want to dress and act like the person you want to be, not the
nice,
person you are.
got it. Okay,
And so if you're going to come and work for me and you're going to meet with whoever you're going to meet with, don't show up in sweatpants.
unless you've been specifically told to, right?
Unless we're going to go work out on the beach or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, uh,
Yeah. So there's that. I think, yeah, get a mentor. I think you wanna listen, and I also think you wanna put yourself. So one of the things that I see with a lot of kind of younger people is they get analysis paralysis,
hmm.
and then they're sort of looking at these things, and they're like, "Well, I'm not sure, and I don't know, and is this the right thing?" And my advice would just be to say, dude, just go for it.
Really?
Really. Yep. And then you can figure everything else out. Just like jump in and we'll figure out the details later on.
Yeah, and you can always improve as you go, right? Just get it on
You can
paper.
always, yeah. And again, I think you want to put yourself in situations where maybe you don't know all the answers. And guess what? That's there's a huge opportunity for growth in those areas.
Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you so much. Great stories, really great insights, and I feel like I wish there was a part two. That maybe I'll invite you back for a part two if you're up for it. I still have so many questions about your experience and all the things you're doing. But I'd like to give this last minute here for you. It's kind of an open mic. It's your opportunity for shout outs or call outs, recommendations, apologies, whatever you want to use it for. Tell us about something cool that's upcoming in your world for people to look out for. But the mic is yours to close us out with.
Holy cow. Well, go check out California Surf Club. That's down in Redondo Beach. I'm working on the Bear Flag on 17th Street.
Nice.
I've done a handful of restaurants for them. This is going to be sort of next level for those guys. Look at my Instagram for my little Lake Arrowhead cabin renewal.
Yes. Nice.
Yeah, and then yeah, I'm always looking at homes and developments and opportunities.
Cool. Well, we'll put all the links in the show notes, and you guys follow along with Steve Jones and Better Shelter and all the cool things that he's doing. And Steve, I can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your story with us. And
My pleasure.
have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Talk to you later. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the show. If you like what you heard, be sure to check back weekly, subscribe to the show, and if you want to be featured on the show, come hit us up at theunderswell.com. We'd love to hear from you.